Welcome everyone. I'm Roseanne Hanson with the Field Arts Institute. That's my own teaching area, and I'm also author of Nature Journaling for a Wildlife and the Master of Field Arts. And I've been doing that around the world in 80 trees for a year now, and we will have 3 more, and that's going to be fun. Today is Australia. Now, to prepare today, I'm going to ask if you've got your video on, if you could turn it off. That helps my recording bandwidth to make sure it's I get the really best recording. And yes, I will be posting the recording after probably later today or tomorrow. And if you have any questions during the session, please just do it verbally. Don't put it in the chat. I won't see it. I'm going too fast, and the way I'm doing it, I can't see the Zoom window very well. So in fact, probably pretty much at all. So just go ahead and unmute and ask. All right, that should do it. All right, I'm going to start my screen share. And you guys, let me know if you are seeing the
Yep.
Great. Yeah, you should be. Thank you. Seeing me around the world, and then my little accordion. If you are new, the way I do mine is I've created an accordion booklet that I actually then affix into my journal, and I'll do 1 per section. So there's 8 sections. And you can do it any way you want. I've seen people do it lots of different ways. To save time, I went ahead and wrote my species on there because I found that was taking up 1 minute or more per tree and wasn't giving us enough time. So here we are. We're going to get going. There we go. As I said, I'm Roseanne Hanson, and welcome to all of you who are new. Great to have you. And we're going to jump right into Australia. And our first stop in Australia is going to be up in Queensland with this really interesting tree. I mean, I'm going to say that about every tree in Australia. And it is this is endemic native to Queensland. And it is in the Malvaceae family, and it's called the narrow-leafed bottle tree, or Corrychong, and that is in one of the Aboriginal languages. There are many languages, native languages in Australia, and many for this particular tree. That one is the more common one, and it is grows maybe to about 40 feet tall, and you see that big fat tubery thing at the bottom. This one is actually a water storage. So it's a very drought tolerant tree, and it's semi-evergreen, or it lives in the semi-evergreen vine thickets known as the bottle scrub. And that's between Queensland as you're going from the wetter coast into the dry interior. So this would be more the transition plant. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to draw. I mean, that just looks like so much fun to draw. And what I like to do is I like to capture the kind of the shape and size of the tree first. So let's do, and as those of you who've been doing this with me, you know, I try to do, I want to make sure I get the proportions right in my little space here. So here's the top of the tree, and I'm just kind of giving myself little tiny scratch marks. So I'm happy with the general shape before I commit to stronger lines. And then I'm going to do really quick little capture here so we can get the essence of this tree. So this one doesn't start branching till it gets way up to the top. It looks like it's got some classic branching. And I'm just going to do some leaf, these kind of like rafts of leaves that you want to, I can't do every leaf, right? So want to get that shape. Little pods of leafy things. And that gives me a nice shape there. And then I always like to indicate how tall. So we do a measuring stick. And this one's, we'll say this is a tall one. So this is going to be like about 40 feet tall. We'll say 40 feet, or I forgot to put the meters equivalent. I apologize on there. And I'll come in and add some texture. This is really a desert area, so not a lot of other trees around this guy. Really cool leaves. I think I want to sketch the leaves, and it's always tempting to do everything. But on this, I'm going to narrow it down to the leaves, which is really a beautiful kind of, looks like a hand, doesn't it? With 6 leaves on that. Can also do that really cool seed pod. Those are awesome. Tempted. I really like that leaf though. And then remember, we also want to get in, before I jump on the leaf, let's get in a little information. So it's native to Queensland. I'm using a much heavier paper than I normally do, so it's got a tooth to it, which makes it a little jumpier on my pen. These are a important component, part of what is called the bottle tree scrub. And then we want to note that the enlarged trunk holds water in droughts. So it would suck up water when it has the opportunity, and then can hold that like a succulent. So very interesting plant. If you want to draw the seed pod, go for that. I'm going to draw the leaf. Looks like there's actually, if you can see my mouse, there's a little guy right there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe. That's interesting. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm doing very faint until I'm ready to commit and I get the proportions right. Cool, spider, like fingery. I find I often with drawing leaves with a lot of leaflets, I lose track of the count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, I just did 1, 2, 3. Okay, and I need one here, and then it looks like there was that little one. And look at those really strong veins. And it radiates from the central. Little guy going up. There's our vein. And now I can come in and maybe ink that in a little bit better. I don't know if you can hear the how scritchy this is. And let's start throwing some watercolor in there. So if you haven't done it, if you are going to watercolor along, it's always a good idea to wake up your colors with a little water, either spray or just drop it on. Should have done that a little bit earlier, but I think I always forget to do this. See if I have something I can put over, so I don't dribble on the next part. I'm going to put a blank paper under there. Okay, we want to mix up. And then I use those of you who don't know, I use a very limited palette. This is a true triad. So cyan blue, which for me is a manganese blue hue from Daniel Smith, quinacridone rose, which is a magenta from Daniel Smith, and a aureolin yellow. So cyan, magenta, yellow, and then I use a dark blue indanthrone and a burnt sienna, and that's all I need to mix what I do. I can do any colors I want, including black. And this is what I call my dirty yellow. Same yellow, but that's the one I dip into sometimes. So I'm going to do a brighter, very bright green. And lay that down. It actually could be even more yellowy. I'm going to throw in a little more yellow. Pretty. This is such a pretty plant. I did not get to see this one when we were in Queensland. There's going to be some really interesting ecological little factoids for Australian plants. They have all sorts of strategies to survive very difficult livelihoods, up to and including fire, drought, flood. They really don't get a break. Let's take a look at the main tree here. I'm going to darken this up and do some foliage pods in there. And I'm darkening it up just by adding my dark blue. And I want several shades of green on here. The darker toward the bottom, it's in shadow. And then I'll go in, maybe brighten it up just a little bit. To get some variation. I'll let those dry. And then go in and really hit a little bit more dark. And let's get that brown trunk. So if I've got my yellow and my cyan, if I add a little bit of the magenta, I can get a nice brown. That's a fun trick. So I'm going to throw some brown on that cool trunk. As you can see, the one in the Botanic Garden isn't quite as gnarly and old as this guy here. And I imagine it gets a lot more water in a Botanic Garden. So that's probably why it's so a shorter and squat. Oh, someone's not muted. Look at that ground too. Wow. Almost the same color as the trunk. And we want to put a little bit of shadow which I'm probably just going to pull some. I'm going to put my shadow on this side. I just pulled it right from the dark blue and I'm dropping it directly in. It works really well. And that helps emphasize that fat trunk. And then I would go in. Let's even probably use this dark blue just to add a little bit of shadows under. Not a lot. So you get the sense that that's a poofy tree. That's going to dry a little lighter, won't be quite so shocking. So there, I think that we can go in, maybe add a little bit of darks under here. Again, I'm laying that dark blue right over, which works great. Just a little bit. And if I wanted maybe a pure yellow, I wonder if that'll show up. Possibly. Okay, I'm going to call that one good for now. If you have time, you could add one of those awesome seed pods. I will be putting the, obviously you'll get this on the recording and you can do any details you want. But let's continue because we've got 7 more trees to do. And where are we going next? We are heading to the south and east coast to look at a plant, a bush or tree-like bush that is endemic to that tiny little section of New South Wales. And it's called the New South Wales Waratah, Teleopea speciosissima. That's a good one. And it is along the coast, and it will be a small shrub or tree up to maybe 13 feet tall, but really wide. So it's maybe 6 feet wide, 2 meters wide. And here's a cool fact, and we're going to see a lot of trees and shrubs that have this feature, and that is called a lignotuber. So we'll see some more with more pronounced. This isn't showing it here if you look at my mouse, but a lignotuber is a woody swelling of the root crown at the base of the tree, and they can get quite big. And that is actually, then the stems grow from that. And that is actually to help protect against destruction, particularly fire. So that's really interesting. And a whole lot of trees and shrubs in Australia have this lignotuber growth form. And these gorgeous flowers, which of course we instantly need to draw because that's so beautiful in that color. They get 3 or 4 inches and hundreds of them on the tree or shrub. And this is another theme we're going to see in Australian plants, and that is the nectar available in Australia is phenomenal in terms of how many really generously producing nectar plants there are. There's a whole bunch of nectarivorous is the correct term, species such as the eastern pygmy possum, the honey eaters, many insects, tons of birds. It's just really amazing. So this is going to be really fun to draw. So again, I want to start with the shape of the plant. And in this one, I'm just going to do a small little, I think I'll just sort of keep on my theme of put my plants on the left and the writing on the right. And that helps me because I'm right-handed. If I did it the other way, I might smear it. So what we want to do is, this one is not going to be so tall. And we might even show, we can go ahead and show the lignotuber, even though so it would probably look something like that. And then there's all these stems. And we're just going to hint at the leaves here, which are alternate, I think. I forgot to look that up. I got so excited about about the flowers that I forgot to look up the leaves. So we'll drop in some flowers here. We're just doing shapes. Don't try to do everything on these little tiny ones. Oh, I keep remind me if I forget and put my hand over, just shout out, move your hand. All right, I'm going to leave that, and then let's tackle, well, first I'll remember to put, I tend to forget this, so let's go ahead and put our little factoids in. So you've got the name, and then this is endemic to New South Wales. The abbreviation is NSW. And we want to put let's put the height of this guy. This looks like let's give it the shorter end of it. This one is let's call this as maybe only about, I would call this one maybe only about 6 feet, judging by the size or by the flowers. And then lignotuber, great term to learn, lignotuber.
I have a question.
Sure.
The bottom figure in the pictures, that's the tree, and then the flower is what's inside the pod.
So here's the flower on the tree here.
Oh, okay, I see it now. Yeah.
And so the pod comes much later. So the pods would be out of the formation of the flowers here.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, and this is what we're going to focus on drawing because it's so cool. Let me just quick write down. Lignotuber protects base, trunk, and root ball from fire. And very important to what was it? Oh gosh, I always have to think about it. Nectarivores. I think we'll double check that. So let's tackle that cool flower. I'm going to have to watch myself so I don't go too deep. And remember, these are quick sketches, but we're going to draw the flower. So I might even call that out. And I'm going to, put it in here. So there's that kind of ball I want to get. And then I'm doing this really light at first. And there are the petals. And what I'm doing is just capturing some shapes right now. And I could really get into the weeds on trying to do too much here. So what I'm trying to do is get the essence of this sky. I'm not doing a botanical illustration. So I'm trying not to obsess on spending 3 hours on just the petals here, which would be really fun to do, but that's not what I'm doing for this exercise. And so do I have time to go in and do all these little guys? No. What I want to do is capture the basics of this. This is quick capture. This is not botanical illustration, but you can still do, see how I'm doing my mark making to approximate the shapes. And then we're looking at the little roundy tops of these little tubercle. And if you really wanted to, obviously, just go for it. If you want to spend the time capturing these, that's great. And these are about, what did it say? Did it say these are maybe 4 inches across? So we can go ahead and do 4 inches. Since I'm using US or British equivalent, imperial. And we'll want to fill in some darks in here to show how interesting the shapes in here are. But I don't have a lot of time. So I'm sort of cherry picking here to give it a little depth. And once I lay in the color, we can start doing a little bit more definition. I think I'm going to leave it there so I don't overdo it and let the color really be my main thing here. And trying to it'd be really fun to spend a ton of time on this one. We could come back and do a full study after we do our sketch. Would be really fun. Remember, these are field sketches. You're out in the field, you're in New South Wales, you're sitting on the ground trying to capture this. And this is how you would do it really quickly. So the first thing I would do, I want to get just a wash of magenta down, very pale magenta on just about everything. And then I can add other highlights, darks, things. If everybody could make sure they're muted. It sounds like someone's not muted, please. And this is just laying down the base color. Ooh. Because we'll be going in later and emphasizing all the other colors. Leave some of them a little bit white, a little bit of highlights. Now let that dry. Let's, I'm going to need to go in and do some greens. it's a fairly open structure here. So I'm just sort of dabbing just to give a little bit of color. And I suspect that lignotuber has got some browns. Just gonna have to make that one up. And then let's throw in some that really pretty magenta. I'm gonna go pretty dark. One of the botanical descriptions said there could be hundreds of these on these tree-like shrubs. So imagine how beautiful that is. So we've got this. Now we want to go in. I'm going to work on getting a little bit of orange in there. And now I can mix orange here, or I can see if I take some pure yellow. Another way to do it is to apply the yellow right over the magenta, which I think is going to work better. So I'm going to get some of that really pretty yellow highlights there. Pure yellow. Let's get those in, because it turns orange if I lay it over the magenta. That pretty, boy, what a pretty plant. And then I want to darken up such as right in here, we really want to get a much darker. It's going to look weird until we get it drying. There's some shadow in here. I want to get that, but I don't want to lose some of the highlights too. And this is one of those ones where I'm in real danger of spending way too much time. It's so pretty and fun to do. I'm going to get some really dark. It would be tempting to, use, because your eyes seeing black, but I prefer to use the colors I'm working with. In this case, it's going to be a dark, 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 dark purpley magenta. Just to get some of this base. Darkness. let that dry for a bit. It's going to lighten up quite a bit. And then I want a lot more pinky magenta in here. And try not to color it in solid because you want to leave some of those highlights to show the shapes. And I'm just going really fast. And maybe just, these guys are really purple. Oop. And I'm going to let this dry. It's getting too hard to work on, so I can come back and enhance those pinks and highlights. You might even want to come back with like a white gel and pop some of the white, and we're going to let that dry so I can come in and define the petals a little better. So that's fun. But yep, I went over on that one. So I need to move on to our next stop. And where are we going? We are now heading not too much farther, just a little bit inland, but this is a big surprise. I have a lot of fun with this one. Check this out. Who knew? There are forests of eucalyptus trees that are called, well, it's the snow gum, and they survive surprisingly low temperatures it's called the Australian Alps, and it's native to Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and Tasmania, which has some high country. So it can survive. The subspecies of this is the most cold tolerant species of eucalyptus, down to -23 Celsius or -9 Fahrenheit, and survives year-round frosts. It's pretty crazy. And it's been introduced to Norway, which suffered some serious deforestation. So interesting plant, just pretty amazing. So let's capture this really interesting gum tree. See how that's drying. It's going to be better. Okay. There we go. This is Eucalyptus passiflora, the most cold tolerant eucalypt ever, which is so interesting. And one thinks of eucalyptus as only hot desert species. So let's see what we've got here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay. I'm just going to get the basic shape of this guy. And they're not huge, are they? Oh, actually, yeah, they can get really huge. And it does form a lignotuber. I neglected to mention that because this is a fire ecosystem. So 20 to 30 meters, so 60 to 100 feet tall. So this guy doesn't look that tall, but we'll get a sketch in. I want to, what most eucalypts have these, you can draw in these rafts of shapes of the leaves. We're not going to try to show all the leaf shape, right? But these pods help you when you're drawing. Beautiful whitish bark that branches beautifully, and we can show I'm sort of doing a riff on the tree here. You could show some of the branching through your leaf rafts, and we'll leave a few of these bare. It's easy to kind of get lost in branching, and it takes some practice. And now that I've been doing so many of these trees, I kind of get the feel for, you want to look at how they branch. Some branch in the classic V, and then V, and then V in ever smaller. And this one looks like it does that. Other trees branch quite differently, some at very strong angles, some at very wide. So and one of the cool features of this is I really like these blossoms. These aren't very big. These are just probably a centimeter or so, but really beautiful. Let me make sure I get in my statistics too. So this is we'll go ahead and make this let's call this one, oh, I'm going to make this in snow too. We'll call this one, say, this one's not a huge one, so we'll call this one 50 feet. And it is most cold tolerant eucalypt. And yeah, let's see. To minus 23 degrees Celsius or minus 9 Fahrenheit. That is so cold.
Excuse me, Roseanne. I see that this one also grows a lingo tuber. Is that common to trees in Australia?
Yes, it is. As I said earlier, we're going to see a lot of the trees develop this formation called a lignotuber down.
Ligno.
Okay. Not showing it, but it's a protection against things like, especially fire. And this is, so these forests are very prone to fires.
All right, thank you. Sorry for my mispronunciation.
Oh, that's a hard one. Lignotubers, I think. It's not like we use that every day, right?
I said lingo tuber,
Yeah.
but everybody knows what I meant. Thank you.
Exactly. So I think the easiest thing for depicting the beautiful white here, and also the shape of the pods, is to zero in on that one. It's really much all I have room for anyway. So we'll want to do a green background, so we can highlight that, the cone with the inflorescence, and try to do like a broken line to show that. There, and then the one next to it. And I'm broken line is good. And then we need to reserve the white. I'm just going to do little dots at this point. And maybe I'll drag the pen just a tiny bit to suggest this, just a few straight lines, but not a lot, or I'll lose that feeling of fuzziness, I guess, featheriness. There's another one here. want to try to get that. See how it sort of goes into from a starburst kind of thing. Let me quickly try to get that in. Might only have time to do part of this. So we might just zero in on a few rather than trying to do a whole bunch. And I got some messy lines in there. That's okay. And see on this one here, it's just about to break out its white fuzzies, the inflorescence. And so maybe I might leave these just really loosely sketchy and focus on these right here. Will give me a little more time. And I'm not doing this exact here. Because I'm already over time. Okay. Let's throw some color in here. And then we can go back later and work on the details. Oops, wrong one. I'm going to start with the green. I almost jumped in with the red, but that's what we want to do last. There's more blue in this green. And I'm going to throw in just a tiny bit of dark. I want to dull that up as well. Oops. And that's for I want to create a background. But I don't want to go into a huge amount of detail. I'm going to even leave it kind of rough at this point because I want to emphasize the flowers, not the background leaves. I don't have time for a full botanical. So adding a lot more of the bright here so we can do our little cones. And we'll throw in some of that red. And we want to drop in some yellow with the magenta to create a red. Kind of an orangey red. Oops, come back. Really interesting, isn't it? And you'll notice the little cones, the florets, have a red base. So if I have time, I can come back and do that. We want to move on though, because I spent too much time probably on that last one, but we can also go in. Remember, these have that beautiful blue-green foliage. It takes a bit of practice to get that color. But I'm going to throw a really loose, see how I'm using almost, it's called this is kind of a semi-dry brush. I'm not getting it super wet. So I'm keeping the texture. See, I'm pushing so my brush splays out. And I think that does a nice job of capturing the more lacy foliage, lacy or kind of open canopy. And then I can come back and add, remember this is snow. So best way to help show it's snow, ironically, is to add just a touch of blue.
Can you say what size brush you're using, and can we also see the tree?
Oh, right, thank you. So I remember I made up that this is snow, that this is showing a summer picture, but here they are in winter. This is, it doesn't have a number. This is an Isabey Squirrel travel brush. I don't know what it's equivalent to. Where are we? It's goes to a really sharp point. And then it's a well-behaved brush. I love it for everything. So just a tiny bit of blue highlight helps to say this is snow. You could also use violet. And then we'll go in later and enhance the tree. But we're going to move on because we're only 3 trees in and moving on. This is what's fun about this. It keeps me hopping. I can go back later and enhance these, but we got to hit our 4th tree. And for that one, we crossed the Tasman Sea over to Tasmania, the straits there. And we got a really cool tree-like plant. It's called the Tasmanian tree fern, Dicksonia antarctica. And it is native to Tasmania, also shows up a little bit in Eastern Australia. And it grows up to 15 meters, about 50 feet. And it's the trunk is an erect rhizome. A rhizome is a branch that's adapted to actually mostly grow underground. But in this case, the rhizome forms a trunk and it's hollow. It comprises decaying matter of earlier growth, and then the roots grow through these decaying matter. So they can actually, if you cut the top off, all this could be discarded and you keep this moist and it would actually root. It grows very slowly and it won't throw out spores until about 20 years old. So that's a really beautiful, interesting plant. We did get to see these in Tasmania. They're really cool. We were looking for platypuses, which we didn't get to see. I think that was Tasmania. But we definitely saw these ferns. So where are we going to draw here? Well, certainly like this shape here, so we can see that kind of fan here. And then we're going to, I also like how this shows how you can get the shape of these. So let's get that going. And then we're probably, I kind of want to show the interior of the trunk is cool if we have time. But let's get some proportions. I'm going to move over here because this has got a broad canopy. So if I do my trunk like this and make it, so that person is maybe, let's call her, 5.5 feet tall. Proportion wise, that's about right. This is about where we want to stop. Notice how I'm just doing little scritchies, even kind of just keeping a broken line with my, barely pushing with my pen so I get some texture. And then we want to show this kind of open growth. And then what you can do is shape wise. So you're going to have some branches, or excuse me, some ferny leaves that are going to be pointed at you like that. And then we'll start getting our shapes. I'm just going with shapes here. Some of them get erect. What I'm doing is just wanting to make sure I get that fern shape. So again, very scritchy. And now I'm going in and just hinting at the individual fern leaves, I guess. Without getting too far into the whole. Just can't do every one, right? So. We want to get the essence of fern. That nice open quality. Now I'm going in just defining that a tiny bit. And how tall is this guy? What did we say? So this is if she's like, say 5.5, so 5, 10, this is about maybe 20 feet. That's it. You can always use things like that for estimating measures. So this is, let's get some factoids here. Native to Tasmania. And let's see. Ooh, important host to epiphytes. And the trunk, which we'll put in quotes, is basically decaying or decayed earlier growth. Through which I'm going to be shorthand, through which roots travel. Super cool. And if we had time, we could show that really cool. Maybe you do like a little arrow out, and we'll show that the trunk is actually. You don't have to do it very big, but it would be fun to show that it's hollow and has these layers with these interesting, those are roots showing through. So we can color that in. And we're doing okay on time, not great. Let me see. Kind of pretty bright color, isn't it? I like to mix my greens so there's different, it's kind of modeled so that you don't get I don't like monotone anything really. Not very little in nature is, pure one color. So, I can go in and grab a little bit more yellow here. It might be brighter where the sun's hitting. And again, I'm trying to feather my brush. And I can come
I'll
back
just
here.
see more of the frond, please. The frond detail.
Say again.
The frond detail, the
See if we
circular,
can zoom in. Let's see how much it'll zoom. It's
but then go up. I mean, not
yeah,
the
on
tree,
that
but
one.
no,
Yeah.
the actual detail of the
Oh, the actual
right
isn't that
there.
beautiful?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
I'm afraid, that would take quite a while to sketch and would be a really fun one to sketch. I was very tempted to do that one.
Yeah, I already kind of started, so I just need
Yeah.
to see a little detail. Thank you.
Yeah, those are I was trying to convince myself whether or not I would do that one, but I decided not to.
Yeah.
Tempting.
For sure.
In fact, I should probably move on. Just wanted to get a little bit of that really pretty brown. And you'll be able to grab these pictures off the website too. And while that's still really wet, I can drop in the really dark blue for shadow. Come on, release. Just to give it shape.
Roseanne, what are epiphytes?
Epiphytes are plants that live, they get their nutrients from the plant they're sitting on, but they grow basically without roots or anything. They attach to other plants.
Thank you.
If anyone can do a better explanation while I move on, please drop that into the chat. I wasn't completely up on my botanical terms. All right, we better move on because we're only halfway. Goodness. And now, oh, we're going to one of my favorite plants. This is a really cool plant. This is strictly a desert plant called the quandong, the desert quandong. Just the name is awesome, isn't it? It is hemiparasitic, meaning it can photosynthesize, but its roots will also attach themselves to other plants' roots to steal nutrients from them other than sugars. So that's why it's called hemi, or partial parasite. It's in the sandalwood family, native to the dry center deserts. And the fruit is what's so prized here, what the native Australians call bush tucker. It is a very delicious fruit, makes wonderful pie fillings. We had quandong pies in Oodnadatta in the Simpson Desert. That was very, very cool, delicious, and everybody loves it. So you'll see lots of mention of that. So obviously we want to sketch that's a fun one. Let's see. We want to do kind of a shrubby, bushy tree. Not huge trees. And with those, almost look at those thick leaves. Interesting. That's an adaptation. They look like eucalyptus leaves, even though it's in the sandalwood family. But those are thick and almost waxy because that helps retain moisture in those harsh desert environments. So I just want to do a representation of the shape without getting too far into it's almost like a weeping willowy shape. Well, not quite that, but it's very feathery and open. And maybe we do just a few. Some of the leaves are erect, some of them look like they're kind of droopy, but I'm using my pen to try to get that.
It looks like there are several trunks, but are there just several of these trees together?
I think what we're seeing, no, see here, looks like this is obscuring, this grass is obscuring. So I did start it out wrong. I think there's more of a single trunk. You're right. Let me correct that. Good spotting. But then it branches really quickly, doesn't it? So you know, it does remind me of a eucalyptus in so many ways. But we've got all these feathery, leafy bits. And I can do a lot more with the paint. The ones we saw were really rangy. And yes, they can branch from the bottom more. They branch quite closely to the ground. And I'll fill that in with the paint, but we want to definitely remind us to add some fruit. And then we want to do that beautiful fruit, but I don't want to forget my factoids. Let's see, I'll put the fruit up here. Just want to mark that way, then I can remind myself where to put it. So it's hemiparasitic. Call it a hemiparasite. And it's in the sandalwood family, which I thought was interesting. Sometimes I write the families, sometimes I don't. It is, fruit is highly prized. As, and this is a great word, bush pucker, meaning bush food. Very fun. So very almost round, more kind of like a, doesn't it look like a pomegranate?
About what size is the fruit? Is it like a cherry or more like an apple?
In between, so call it like apricot size.
What does it taste like?
Ooh, it's, gosh, that's a good question. It's a taste all its own. It's very well, obviously it had a lot of sugar in it, the pies we had, but it's sweety with a tiny bit of souriness. So let me think what it's compared to. Get some of these blemishes. I'm just using my pen. Almost ridged. Yeah, hopefully we'll get time to, let's make sure we make time to get that some color in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a kind of an orangey wash. And remember to leave a highlight point. I never like to start too dark. You can always build up your darks. It's harder to take them away if you blow it. Now I'm just dropping in pure magenta because later I can do a yellow wash to give it more of the orangey.
Is there a pit to this, Roseanne?
That's a good question. Yes, it should. It is believe it's a drupe. We'll have to look that up. We didn't eat them wild. We stopped at a store.
So this is probably a livelihood for some farmer.
It's wild craft. It's wild
Oh,
gathered.
okay.
So these are
Okay,
all over the desert out there.
okay.
And I don't know if people put them in their gardens. That's a good question.
They've tried to domesticate it with lots of problems.
Aha. Do you know what the problems?
Having the proper drainage, having different kind of pests. And since it's hemiparasitic, having the proper host,
Aha. Interesting.
because evidently the host also might protect it from some pests.
Aha. So see, that's interesting. So yeah, it's just pretty much wild gathered. The only place you can really find anything made with the fruit is out in the desert towns. So Birdsville, Oodnadatta, Mount Isa, I think.
But you have a picture of the pith, the seed.
Oh, yes, we forgot about that. Someone asked about that and I completely forgot. It has this really interesting looking seed. Look at that. That's much smaller. Those are not equivalent in size. But yeah, I completely forgot since I hadn't seen it myself. Good point. Thank you. So the leaves are very pale. We don't want to go overboard here. And I want it to be really dry. Because I just want a suggestion here. And, feel free if you wanted to zoom in and do a leaf on its own. But what we're doing is capturing the essence of this tree. That's what these are all about. If you had tons of time, you were spending out, in the field and you had time to do an actual little mini portrait, that would be fun too. I'm going to have to move on. Oop, and I want to get some of that. Don't forget to put our little red fruit. Oops, that one got too big. And that gives us a fun representation. Imagine too, all the animals that love this. We'll come back later after this is dry and add even more darks to give it shape. But I think that's a good start on that guy. I need to darken the arrow, how do you say that? Arrows at the bottom, darken that. But we need to move on because we are moving west to one of my favorite groups of plants in Australia, the Banksias, which look like bottle cleaners. And there are 170 Banksias, all in Australia. It's in the Proteaceae family. Banksias were named after Joseph Banks, who was on the Cook expedition. He's a explorer, keen botanist, was really responsible for keying out so many of the plants for the first time in Australia and the islands, Australasia. And they're so cool and hard to draw. So those the plants grow up to maybe 8 meters, 26, 30 feet. And they do sometimes form a lignotuber. So here we go again with that theme. And they're really heavy nectar producers, obviously tons of nectar. So birds, bats, rats, possums, bees, so many invertebrates. So really important plant here. I love this family. So some of them are red, orange, they're just all over the map. And this one is Ashby's Banksia. And I forgot to write down who Ashby was. Oh, well. So let's see, these are endemic to West, this particular one is, well, I think all the Banksias are endemic to the West. And Spinifex is a grass, clumpy grass, big clumps of grass. They're super sharp. You never want to go walking casually through Spinifex, but that's where these are found. So, oh, and I did forget to write the height on this one, so I'll come back and do that later. So this doesn't look super tall as a specimen for the tree. I'm going to do a really quick little tree down here. I mean, just a like micro tree, because most of my time I want on those leaves and the flowers. So it branches.
Roseanne,
Yeah.
that quandong is a drupe.
Thank you. Yes. Perfect. So it looks like this has like all these spindly. Look at those leaves, how they kind of like shoot out. I'm doing a micro tree on this one because I need, for my layout, I need the space. I need the space for the flower, but you might have more room to do a bigger one. So this one doesn't look super tall, judging by the those flower spikes are maybe 3 inches, 4 inches. Those look pretty hefty. So that's probably no more than 10 footer, 8 foot. Let's call it an 8-foot tree on this one. And then here it's got the like little candles. Okay. And then, wow, look at the interesting way it's almost like a cone where the seeds come out. So choose what you like. You could do the cone, you could do both. In fact, it would be really fun to do a flower and then in exactly the same, just mimic it, do a cone next to it. So we want to, I'm going to be using just dots. And it looks pretty symmetrical, doesn't it? Like I started to narrow it at the base, but it doesn't look like it narrows at the base.
Roseanne, are you doing the cone or the flower?
I'm going to do the flower. And then if I have time, I could leave space to do a ghost drawing of a cone over here. Probably wouldn't have time to do it with you guys right now, but I could certainly leave the space, which would be kind of fun to show the general shape. And
The leaves are really interesting, I think.
Aren't
They're
they?
leaves.
I was wanting to get one in. That's kind of why looks like they kind of come out.
Does it have an aroma?
Oh, good question. We'll have to research that. I did not I did not note that, nor did the information that I was reading indicate that. Very few did, but botanists rarely mention that. That's an interesting point. Good point.
Did you say they're cones and flowers, or the cone is what's left after the flower?
It looks like the cone's what's left after the flower. And boy, it's, it'd be tempting to get in here and try to do all this texture, but I'm only want to do just a little bit, both for time and, you can really, whoops, I need to pay attention. These go in the direction like so. Didn't quite get that right, because I was talking and see how it's important to get them to going in the direction that looks like they go. Well, I imagine they go in a spiral around, or a circles around. It's not quite that random. So pay attention to your scritches. Don't go overboard, but pay attention to the direction.
I think it's called a whirl, isn't it? A WH.
Whirl, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. And then these are, say, just about, we'll say about 3 inches in diameter and up to 6 inches long. That's good to know. This is definitely looks like a 6-incher. And we wanted, so there are 170 Banksias, all in Australia. And heavy nectar producers. Well, let's get some of that orange going. That's really pretty. I'm going to start with a nice yellow. In fact, you know what would probably work the best? If you look at the color, a really pale yellow wash is going to be a good idea because it's very yellow on the edges. It's a really watery wash. Kind of glows. And while I'm at it, I'll probably just run a yellow line up each leaf too. I often do that if there's the leaves show that strong yellow vein. Okay, now I'm going to start adding orange. Trying to reserve some of that outer yellow. Oops, sorry.
Did you say there are different colored flowers and different trees?
Yeah,
Or-
the different Banksias are all over the map. So there's magenta ones, red ones, bright yellow, orangey. They're really cool. They're highly, highly popular cultivated flowers sold in florist shops all over the world. I mean, you can imagine. Whoops, you see what happened there? It was drying out and I ended up lifting instead of adding color. So I'm going to let that sit and I'll have to come back. But you saw what happened there. If you don't pay attention, I didn't have enough pigment on or paint on my brush. And when I touched it in, it started removing paint instead of adding. So you have to pay attention. And these are just like my first passes on the color. I'll come back and add darks and enhance things quite a bit. But that gets me started nicely. Okay, well, moving along. This is so much fun. Banksias wouldn't it just be amazing to be a botanical illustrator where you could spend hours and hours on just one thing? This one would make you go cross-eyed. There's some beautiful illustrations of early Banksias. Now, this is fun. Okay, I really wanted to get to this topic because it is so important to the Australian ecological story. And that is, okay, this is a very common eucalyptus, the river red gum. And here's a funny thing. All the years we spent exploring Australia, I always called it the red river gum. And then I was transcribing this and I realized, no, it's the river red gum. It's a red gum. It is a riverine species. It really likes to grow in floodplains, along rivers, waterways. Incredibly important ecologically in terms of its structure. It's when it falls into the rivers and also when it's submerged in a floodplain, this area here, and this is showing a lignotuber, is incredibly important for aquatic habitats. And what's happened in Australia over the years is they've removed these from along riverways because it obstructs the rivers for boats and things. So they've been removing them, but that's causing an ecological imbalance. Very interesting. Now, the most interesting thing, and the reason I really wanted to emphasize this very common eucalyptus, is that eucalypts constitute over 75% of the trees in Australia. And they are very, very nectar rich, even though those are tiny little flowers. There's billions of them, and they produce a lot of excess nectar. And you want to write this down. You want to read a really awesome book. It's called Where Song Began by Tim Lowe. And basically, he was among the first to put this forth. I mean, this has taken 30 years or so of research, but songbirds evolved in Australia in the what was the Australian region because of basically sugar. They became highly successful, much more aggressive, and very, very talented, I use that in quotes, but they were able to, with all this energy, really go at it and evolve song. So all our songbirds, there's 10,000 total Austeens in the world, 5,000 in Australia, came out of Australia. So that is just amazing. So when you think of Australia, think of all the nectar in these plants that we've been seeing and what that means for the birds that we hear singing in our gardens. So we're going to do a river red gum because just kind of that very cool songbird connection. I love that. It just just makes, that's what makes us just love learning about nature, right? Oh my goodness. So, and these are beautiful trees. Notice too, when you look at eucalyptus, especially these big ones, there's often lots of branches that fall around them. They shed their branches as just part of their normal life cycle. So a lot of people don't realize that. They plant them by their homes and then you get branches falling. So let's do a nice big.
What was the name of the book again?
Where Song Began by Tim Low, L-O-W. So we want to get the lignotuber.
These are also favorite trees of the koalas.
Yes, there's a specific species of eucalyptus that is their absolute favorite. This one, I can't remember if it's this one or another one. There are so many species of eucalyptus. I could easily get lost in the beautiful curving branches here, but I have to keep saying, move on, move on. It's very meditative, isn't it? So I'm wanting to capture this quickly. Let's not forget we can use our little leaf pod shapes. It's like a candelabra with little pods at the end. It's so pretty. And that beautiful white bark. I'm just scratching barely with my pen because I don't want to commit to super strong lines yet. And okay, I'm getting into too much detail. So you notice how I can get into that and just keep going and not get farther along. Don't probably have time to spend the detail on doing that incredible flora, the flowers. I would love to. Going to do those leaves though. I think they're really pretty. Let me move. I've got something in the way here. I really like eucalyptus leaves. Barely left myself enough. I'm just going to do one. I barely left myself enough room here. They're very elegant. We've got several growing in our garden here.
Where did you say the flowers are located? That we're seeing that picture of the little flower?
So those would be at branch ends or along little stems. It's so tempting to include so much in the in every one. It's all so interesting, isn't it? So these leaves are very fleshy and almost waxy. And again, that's for the desert conditions, keeps the moisture in. So if you have time, tackle those beautiful flowers. You'll need to do a dark background, or just go ahead and paint a dark background and then use a white gel pen to draw the little spidery. I'm not sure what structures those are. Those aren't the anthers. We need to look that up. That would be super, super cool to find out. So this particular, the river red gum, it's named for the red wood. It's the most widely distributed eucalypt in Australia. It's in every state and all over the world. I have some in our yard. %75 of Australian trees are eucalypts. And then we want to say something about their heavy nectar producers. And the reason they are is the nutrient poor soils in Australia means that the plants have a hard time putting a lot into fancy leaves and other growth forms. So all their energy, they just pour into nectar production to attract their pollinators. And we'll make a little note about Aussine songbird evolution. Trigger. That helps us remember that. I love the color of that.
Excuse me, Roseanne, do
Yeah.
you show the height of this tree?
Oh, did we? No, I got so excited about the the nectar. I forgot about that. These get really tall, so that's going to be at least 100-footer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're big trees. Beautiful trees, just beautiful. In Alice Springs, in the desert, deep desert, the red desert center, there's a dry creek, it's usually dry creek that runs through Alice, and it's just got the most beautiful forest of these river red gums. So and it smells so beautiful, the eucalypt smell.
Roseanne, your slide is covering part of your page that you're painting on.
Let's see. Oh, there.
There you go. That's better. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, it was just a tiny bit off. Thank you. It's a really pretty color, isn't it? And then I'm going to use the lighter green for the tops of my little pods.
Roseanne,
Yeah.
130 to 180 feet.
Wow, even bigger than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at that. It is amazing.
And imagine what it's like when it drops branches from that height. So rookie campers in Australia will camp under eucalyptus trees. Is really a stupid idea. You don't want to pitch a tent or put your vehicle under these trees. I really wanted to include, a more, I tend to go with choose plants that are rare or unusual, but wanted to emphasize even this is a very common plant tree. Just highlight how important eucalyptus are. We tend to take them for granted. They're used all over the world as fast-growing reforestation plants. So, for example, in Ethiopia, where like all over Addis Ababa is huge forests of eucalyptus, because back in the day, when they denuded their country of trees, they chose eucalyptus for the replanting because they grow quickly. It's good hardwood. It's good firewood, but they're not native to Africa. So interesting, isn't it?
Roseanne, I noticed there's not a lot of leaf duff underneath. We have a lot of eucalyptus trees where I live for windbreaks, and the ground is just covered. So I'm wondering if animals eat.
Oh,
there's-
I don't think
animals?
so. That's a good point. Could have been a fire went through. There's not a lot of leaf grew, or not a lot of else in here. This could have been a fire clearing. Although it's not showing fire scar frequently. That's a really good observation. And that would be something we would want to read about and investigate. Because you are right. When you walk through, like when we walked down the watercourse in Alice Springs, you're stepping over all sorts of stuff. So could be this is in someone's, so maybe someone cleared this. There's a paddock. Maybe this is an animal paddock, but I don't think anything eats the leaves except koalas. But that's a good thing to note, question mark. I love that. That's what's great about these explorations. So we're on our last tree. I'm almost going to make the time. And we're hopping up, going to include Papua New Guinea, because this is a really important plant for human use. And it's native to Papua New Guinea, but also Queensland, New South Wales, and then Vanuatu and New Caledonia. So it's all over the Australasia. It is the black bean or Irtali Moreton Bay chestnut. And what's so important about it is that bean, which are they're maybe a couple inch big. The beans maybe a little bit bigger, but an incredibly important food plant for Aboriginal peoples. And there are song lines. If you don't know, one of the most beautiful things in the Aboriginal communication is these history song lines they pass on verbally to each other about their origins, about foodways, about everything, plants, animals. And so many of them are featuring this incredibly important food plant. It is toxic. It has saponins in it that are inedible until it's leached, so soaked and then dried, pounded into flour, and then roasted, and they call it damper, which is a bread. The parts of the plant, the bark fiber, they make into traps, nets, baskets, and then those lovely little pods, they are popular as toys for kids. So a really cool plant, wonderful. Look at that, awesome blossom. So choose what you want to draw. Because of the foodways, the song lines, I want to draw the bean there. And of course, that's really the name of the plant, the black bean. And I suspect in the Aboriginal language, Irtali, and there's many others. Remember, there are there hundreds of sub-languages in Aboriginal cultures in Australia. So there's so many different words for this lovely plant. And so, but the black bean. And did I write down what family it's in? No, I did not. Maybe someone can Google that, what family this is in. That would be important to know. I didn't write that down. So let's capture. Now this looks like this is an urban version. So are they always this nice and neat? I don't know. I couldn't find a whole lot of examples of wild ones. Good photos. Does branch into smaller branches. looks like V-shaped branching. Notice how I'm just doing ghost branches so we can get those leaf sets in between. And those are, you can tell that the leaves
Roseanne,
alternate.
it's
Yeah.
the Fabaceae family.
So it is. I wondered. I was going to say that, but then I thought I don't know that for sure. So it's in the bean family, Fabaceae. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I was just about to blurt that out, and then I realized that would just be a wild ass guess. Wanted to make sure I wasn't making up something. Fake facts. And so these grow up, or they could be tall, 140 feet, 130 feet. This particular one doesn't look that big, so I'm going to call it 80 feet. And then wonderful bean. I can run that right down the middle. It's always fun to draw seed pods. Who else likes to draw seed pods? They're just really, really satisfying to draw.
They're very cool. And I enjoy collecting them as well.
Yes, that's always fun. Look at those, the light green, the crack in the bean showing the green. I could definitely, when I start doing these bean pods and things especially, I can just sort of zone out, and I would sit here and do it all day in ink. So beautiful.
It appears that each bean pod has a flower, flowers.
I think each flower produces a bean pod, yes. I'm going to have to lay off and finish my details later, but you can see how just using a little, your mark making with your pen by scritching it over, you can get a really nice representation really quickly. Just using different marks. You know, I wouldn't even need to color this necessarily, but I love doing color. So this is native to Papua New Guinea. And up to 130 feet tall. Wow. And important food plant. A catalyst for song lines. And just enough time to throw in a little bit of color. Okay.
It looks like they grow off the branches. I see there's leaves, pretty good sized leaves, but the flowers just start coming off of the branches.
I see that, yeah. Those would be really fun to dive into that flower too. And maybe a tiny bit of ink work to show the pinnate leaves. You could do a teeny bit. It's always tempting to do that, but dare I try to do the green? I don't know if I can reserve it while I do the brown. I could get some waxed paper after the green dries and cover it with wax or Frisket if you have something called Frisket. That would be fun. But I'm kind of just doing this by the seat of my pants here. Since we're short on time. I'm going to get that really pretty brown.
I assume they're not deciduous. Is that?
That's a good question. If it gets cold enough where some of them are, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, they might need to shed them just naturally to replace them, right? So when they would do that, I'm not sure. I don't want to forget to leave a little shine spot. There. So that is going to give me, was able to reserve the green mostly. So you can see how you can do that. See how I'm just dropping it, still damp, and I'm just dropping the darker. So I'll have to go in and I can enhance everything when it dries. But I'm going to stop now because we're time. See, I'm having trouble stopping. I'm going to stop. I have a tendency to keep going. But what's really fun is that we can really capture the essence and learn something very quickly. So if you're out in the field, these are ways that you can capture trees, anything, plants, eventually moving animals quickly in the field. Thank you guys so much for coming. That was so fun. If you do like these free workshops and this series, which has been a year, can you believe it? I do have a little tip jar at exploringoverland.com/tip jar. Always appreciated, not like required or anything. And I am
Roseanne,
lost.
any idea when the next one will be?
Good question. I was trying to schedule it. Let me stop the share. I was trying to schedule it before we did this. It will be in April after our next boot camps. So I have the Sonora Desert boot camps coming up at the end of March, first week of April, and then I'll schedule one for that. And the next one's going to be the parts of Southeast Asia. And then I'm going to move to the Pacific and hit Hawaii and New Zealand and Bora Bora and Rapa Nui and all of that. And then our final one is going to be wild cards. So I'm going to go back and do ones that I wish I had done on all the other continents. So maybe pick one from South America, Africa, ones that we just didn't get to do. I think that'll be fun. So if you've got a wild card tree you want, email it to me. That would be super fun. I'll get in fact, that would be a lot of fun because I got great suggestions from a lot of you for these, and it's been really fun. So I will work on, I'll finish these up. But, that was a good start. And then I'll post these and the recording on the website and email that out to you all. So thank you so much for coming, and hope you had fun.
Little question.
Sure.
Is there a place to post our works with a hashtag or something like this?
I have not created a Padlet for this series.
Mm-hmm.
You can email them to me and I'll put them on the web page for the recording. So I'll put mine. Anybody wants to share theirs, please do, and I will put that on. So there's a slideshow of everybody's.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for reminding me for that.
And your map will also be available?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll do that map so you can note where our specimens were. Like,
thank you.
Okay. Well, everybody have a great weekend. Hey, Deborah, there you are. Hello. Thank you all so much, and we will have fun with the next one. So
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you.
Roseanne. This was awesome.
Thank you.